I observed the convergence of multiple escalatory pressures that render comprehensive Middle Eastern warfare increasingly probable, transforming what began as bilateral Iranian-Israeli confrontation into systemic conflict that threatens to fragment regional order permanently through cascading alliance commitments that no single actor can control once military momentum achieves critical threshold activation. The deployment of American naval armadas to Iranian coastal waters, combined with Israeli cabinet authorization for Operation Iron Strike, represents imperial calculation that simultaneous pressure can achieve strategic breakthrough that previous decades of containment failed to accomplish. The strategic architecture reveals accumulated instabilities that have been building since the June 2025 Iran-Israel war, demonstrated both sides' willingness to cross previously sacred red lines through direct territorial attacks. I analyze how Trump's military positioning represents escalation beyond diplomatic pressure toward operational preparation for comprehensive regional campaign that targets not merely Iranian nuclear infrastructure but regime survival itself through coordinated Israeli-American action that transforms bilateral conflict into imperial intervention. This represents the culmination of containment strategy failure that American and Israeli strategic thinking can no longer tolerate under conditions where Iranian nuclear threshold status provides immunity from conventional pressure while proxy network reconstruction threatens long-term regional balance. When Iranian uranium stockpiles approach weapons-grade levels while Revolutionary Guard capabilities recover from previous strikes, Washington and Tel Aviv confront existential choice between accepting Iranian regional hegemony or implementing military solution through coordinated action. The timing proves strategically calculated to maximize Iranian vulnerability, while exploiting domestic Iranian instability that protest suppression has temporarily contained but not resolved. Trump's early presidential term provides domestic political capital for military action that electoral calculations would constrain during campaign periods, while Netanyahu's coalition government requires external military success to maintain domestic legitimacy following October 7 strategic failures. Israeli strategic calculation recognizes narrowing window for effective action before Iranian defensive preparations and Chinese-Russian protection arrangements make military solutions prohibitively costly or impossible to execute successfully. The Netanyahu-Trump coordination at Mar-a-Lago established operational framework for combined strikes that leverage American strategic capabilities with Israeli tactical expertise and intelligence penetration of Iranian defensive systems. I examine the immediate operational scenarios that coordinated strike planning must consider, recognizing that surgical operations cannot achieve strategic objectives without triggering comprehensive Iranian retaliation across multiple theaters simultaneously. Iranian Revolutionary Guard capabilities distributed across regional proxy networks from Lebanon to Yemen ensure that Israeli-American strikes generate immediate escalation beyond Iranian territorial boundaries into regional warfare involving multiple state actors. The nuclear facility targeting precedent established in June 2025 cannot be repeated with similar operational surprise, as Iranian defensive preparations have evolved through Russian and Chinese technical assistance providing advanced air defense systems and hardened underground installations. Combined Israeli-American planners confront operational environment where critical targets require sustained bombing campaigns rather than single-strike destruction, creating commitment levels that democratic political systems struggle to maintain through inevitable casualties. Iranian retaliation capacity extends beyond direct military response into economic warfare through oil market manipulation and shipping disruption that global energy systems cannot absorb without triggering supply chain crises across industrial economies. The Strait of Hormuz choke point provides Iranian leverage that American naval superiority cannot completely neutralize without occupation-level commitments that transform limited strike operations into comprehensive regional occupation. Regional proxy activation represents Iranian strategic response that multiplies target requirements exponentially beyond Iran's borders into Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Gaza simultaneously. Hezbollah's reconstructed missile arsenal provides Iranian retaliation capacity against Israeli civilian centers that Iron Dome systems cannot completely intercept. ensuring Israeli casualties that generate domestic pressure for expanded operations against Lebanese territory and Syrian supply lines. Chinese strategic analysis recognizes unprecedented opportunities for American imperial overextension through Iranian support that avoids direct confrontation while maximizing American strategic costs across multiple theaters. Every American sortie over Iranian territory represents military resources unavailable for Pacific operations, creating windows for Chinese advancement in Taiwan Strait that American strategic planners cannot ignore without accepting reduced deterrent capacity. Russian involvement proves equally destabilizing through provision of advanced defensive systems and intelligence sharing that complicates Israeli-American operational planning, while demonstrating effective resistance models for other regional powers facing similar pressure. Iranian survival under coordinated attack provides precedent for successful resistance to American-Israeli pressure that enhances Russian confidence for escalation in Ukraine and elsewhere. The proliferation implications extend beyond immediate regional warfare into systemic breakdown of non-proliferation architecture that American hegemony previously maintained through combined pressure and protection arrangements. Saudi Arabia's nuclear program development accelerates dramatically when Iranian nuclear potential faces coordinated military action without providing security guarantees that replace nuclear deterrent capacity for regional powers. Turkish calculations prove particularly destabilizing given NATO membership that complicates American regional operations, while Turkish domestic politics increasingly favor Iranian solidarity over American alliance obligations. Erdogan's mediation efforts demonstrate Turkish recognition that Israeli-American warfare against Iran threatens Turkish regional interests through refugee flows and economic disruption that European integration cannot adequately compensate. The economic dimensions reveal vulnerabilities across global financial systems that Iranian asymmetric warfare can exploit through cyber operations and monetary system disruption that transcend traditional military targeting. Iranian capacity for attacking American and Israeli financial infrastructure through Revolutionary Guard cyber units provides retaliation options that impose systemic costs on Western economic operations globally, while avoiding nuclear escalation thresholds. European strategic orphanage created by Trump's alliance management failures means continental capitals cannot effectively coordinate response to American-Israeli military operations while simultaneously depending on American security architecture for protection against Russian pressure. European energy dependency on Middle Eastern supplies creates additional vulnerability to Iranian asymmetric warfare that alliance obligations cannot adequately address. I analyzed 3 potential escalation trajectories that Israeli-American strike coordination must accommodate, each carrying profound implications for global order stability. First, surgical strikes that successfully degrade Iranian nuclear capacity while avoiding comprehensive retaliation through carefully calibrated targeting that preserves regime survival incentives. This pathway requires Iranian calculation that limited losses justify accepting Israeli-American demands rather than triggering regional warfare. Second, limited strikes that generate comprehensive Iranian regional retaliation requiring Israeli-American escalation into sustained bombing campaign against proxy networks from Lebanon to Yemen. Simultaneously, this pathway leads toward regime change operations that Israeli-American military cooperation can achieve but cannot successfully conclude without occupation-level commitments across multiple territories that democratic political systems cannot sustain. Third, Iranian preemptive action triggered by American military buildup that forces immediate comprehensive warfare before Israeli-American strike operations achieve tactical surprise. This pathway begins with Iranian proxy attacks against American regional assets and Israeli population centers, followed by coordinated retaliation that escalates into sustained regional warfare, involving multiple state actors with unpredictable alliance configurations. Each trajectory carries systemic implications that extend beyond immediate regional consequences into global order restructuring that American hegemony may not survive intact. Iranian resistance demonstrates alternative models for challenging American-Israeli pressure that other regional powers can emulate when facing similar ultimatums, while Iranian collapse creates power vacuums that American resources cannot fill without imperial overextension. The domestic American political dimensions create constraints on sustained military operations that Iranian strategy can exploit through prolonged resistance, generating American casualties sufficient to trigger electoral consequences. Trump's political calculations assume rapid victory, demonstrating American strength without providing extended warfare that opposition parties can exploit for domestic political advantage during electoral cycles. Israeli domestic politics create additional pressure for escalation beyond American strategic preferences, as Netanyahu's coalition survival depends on demonstrating military success against Iranian threats that limited American strikes may not adequately address. Israeli independent action against Iranian targets risks triggering escalation that American planners cannot control while generating obligations for expanded American support. The technological warfare dimensions reveal Iranian adaptation to Israeli-American military superiority through asymmetric capabilities that Russian and Chinese support has enhanced beyond Western intelligence estimates. Iranian drone technology, demonstrated effectively against Israeli and American regional assets, provides cost-effective retaliation capacity that inflicts disproportionate costs on defensive systems. Regional refugee flows triggered by sustained warfare create humanitarian crises that European and regional systems cannot absorb while generating political instability across neighboring states that Iranian strategy can exploit for broader regional destabilization. Syrian and Lebanese experience demonstrates how warfare spillover effects create multi-generational regional instability that military victory cannot resolve. Allied coordination challenges across NATO and regional partnerships mean American-Israeli operations proceed without comprehensive diplomatic cover that international legitimacy requires for sustained public support. European reluctance combined with regional allies' operational restrictions isolates American-Israeli coordination diplomatically while providing Iranian-narrated advantages for resistance operations. The precedent implications prove particularly destabilizing for global nuclear order, as coordinated military action against threshold nuclear state creates international system instability that incentivizes proliferation rather than preventing it. Regional powers recognize that American-Israeli protection provides no guarantee against American-Israeli attack when strategic calculations change, fundamentally undermining non-proliferation objectives. Iranian revolutionary ideology provides resistance motivation that conventional deterrence cannot address, creating warfare duration that American-Israeli coordination must sustain despite electoral cycles and domestic political pressures that constrain continued operations. The clerical system's legitimacy depends on resistance to foreign pressure, ensuring prolonged conflict regardless of tactical outcomes. I conclude that coordinated American-Israeli military action against Iran, while tactically achievable through combined technological superiority, creates strategic consequences that Western political and military systems cannot manage without fundamental imperial overextension, threatening American hegemonic stability globally. The asymmetric warfare capabilities that Iranian strategic culture has developed provide retaliation options imposing systemic costs exceeding any benefit from nuclear program degradation. The regional alliance system that American Middle East strategy depends upon faces irreparable damage through warfare that forces allied choice between Iranian accommodation and American-Israeli support under conditions where Western protection cannot guarantee security against Iranian asymmetric retaliation. Regional calculations increasingly favor stability through Iranian accommodation rather than warfare threatening domestic security. The global energy system disruption that Iranian retaliation ensures through infrastructure targeting creates economic consequences for American allies exceeding any security benefit from Iranian nuclear elimination. European and Asian dependence on Middle Eastern energy supplies means Iranian warfare imposes costs on Western alliance systems that strategic cooperation cannot justify when alternative diplomatic solutions remain theoretically available. Iranian proxy network resilience, demonstrated through survival of coordinated Israeli-American pressure in June 2025, ensures that future military action initiates prolonged regional warfare rather than achieving decisive strategic victory. The ideological foundations that define Iranian resistance provide motivation that conventional military pressure cannot eliminate, creating commitment levels that democratic systems cannot match through electoral constraints on continued warfare operations.